Just follow along as we speak. But to start,
Alright, so how many of you guys have seen or like The Office? So we just have a little snippet from The Office that kind of encompasses a little bit of what we're going to be talking about.
Stop. Let's see if we can't just brainstorm and find some creative alternatives that are win-win.
Win.
Yes, thank you. How about Angela makes the poster into a t-shirt which Oscar wears. That way he can never see it, and whenever she looks at Oscar, she can see it. Win, win, win. No.
That's no.
Okay, well, brainstorm. Own the solution.
How about I leave it up?
How about she takes it down?
How about Angela can keep it up on Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Okay, that is called a compromise, and it is style 3, and it is not ideal. To sum up, win-win, make the poster into a t-shirt. Win-lose, take the poster down, compromise Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the answer is make the poster into a t-shirt. Win-win.
Win.
Fine.
But
It is done.
All right, so there he kind of gave a pretty brief and very surface level and kind of wrong overview of the 6 paradigms of human interaction. And those are win, win-lose, lose-lose, win-win, and win-win or no deal. Right? And so win is kind of what Michael Scott did, and win is basically you don't really care about the other person losing. You don't really think about that. You just care about yourself winning. And now this might not always be on purpose, but they just want to get what they want. And a person with this win mentality thinks in terms of securing his own ends.
Alright, so the second one on your sheet is lose-win. So lose-win is pretty much when someone submits to the other person, and these are usually people who are quick to please and kind of get walked all over sometimes. Yeah. Alright, so the third one on your sheet is win-lose. This is more of a authoritarian approach, and you see comparisons a lot with this approach where one's better than the other, so one's winning, one's losing kind of thing. So you're pretty much thinking how you can win and thinking how the other person can lose. An example Covey gives of this is where there's a president of a company who sees a lot more potential in his company than what they're doing. They're not being very successful, and he thinks they could be a lot more successful. So he basically explains that he brings all his managers up, and he kind of gives them like a board where how they're doing, and so the winner or the most successful person gets a vacation to the Bermudas, or to Bermuda. And so by like creating this competition and competitive environment between the managers, it creates a win-lose situation. So if one manager is being successful, all the others are losing pretty much. And so this is kind of the problem and the reason why they're not being as successful as he wants them to be and not reaching their full potential. So I mean, if they work together and all are trying for one common goal, then they'd be a lot more successful. Yeah, and so Covey says you can't change the fruit without changing the root. So basically, the president wants one thing while he's creating something else, and he's using this kind of authoritarian approach when it comes to his company. And so it'd be a lot more helpful if he had them all work together instead of pitting them against each other in a win-lose situation. And I've seen this similarly with like my experience with sports and baseball. You see teams that are really good and really skilled, and there's guys on the team that are like, all right, I want to do the best I can do, and they're not as much team guys. And those teams are good, but the teams that are usually better are the teams with chemistry and camaraderie, who like want the team to be good as a whole and work together. And so I feel like those teams are usually the best, and that's what works.
The next one is lose-lose. Now this happens when 2 win-lose individuals get together. These people are stubborn, determined, ego-invested individuals. And basically, what this does is it created a competition, and one person lost, and instead of kind of that being the end of it, it becomes, I want to get back at that other person. Like, I need to get the upper hand, I need to win again. And so they forget that murder is suicide and that revenge is a two-edged sword. That's a quote from Covey. And an example that Covey used is an example of a couple that divorced, and the ex-wife needs to get 50% of all the man's belongings. And so the man sells his $10,000 car for $50, gives the wife $25. And so he's just kind of getting back at that wife. He's not actually getting what that car is worth, and obviously gypping the ex-wife as well, but he's kind of blind to the fact that he's robbing himself of all that money as well, just because he wants to get back at that ex-wife.
The fifth paradigm on your sheet is a win-win scenario. This is thinking how you and the other person can win. Covey says that in most situations, they are part of an interdependent reality, not an independent reality. Win-win is really the only viable alternative of all 6 paradigms, because it's the one that you should seek after where both parties can benefit. The 6th one is win-win or no deal. This is an ultimatum that either both parties will agree or both parties will agree to respectfully disagree if the parties' expectations do not line up with each other. So an example of this for our sake in the kinesiology world would be setting expectations for a sports team before anybody commits. For example, in USYVL, which is the youth volleyball league, it's kind of like the equivalent of AYSO. Everybody gets to play and everybody has fun. That's the goal. In club volleyball, everybody is trying to earn their playing spot, and the end goal is typically a scholarship. So as long as those expectations are set at the beginning of the season, everybody knows what they're getting into, and the families can choose what's best for them.
And so how to get to this win-win scenario is a 4-step process. And the first step is see the problem from the other person's perspective. Second one is identify the key issues and concerns they might have. Third is determine the results that can be acceptable for both of you. And fourth, identify possible options to achieve those results. If you guys want me to repeat any of those, just let me know. Identify the key issues and concerns they might have. Yes, sir.
Okay, so now we want you guys to pair up. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
What was the 4-step process of seeking?
For seeking win-win. So now we want you guys to pair up, and we're going to give you a scenario, and you guys have to figure out how to reach a win-win. So one of you wants to go bowling for your Friday night. The other person is hungry and just wants to go eat for your Friday night. You guys need to find an optimal solution where both is a win-win and it's not a compromise. That's the highlight. You're not compromising, you're both in the optimal state of you guys both benefiting. So go ahead and pair up and talk about that for a little bit.
has some fire.
There's bowling alleys to get like pizza bites or like,
Alright guys. So does anybody have any solutions that they came up with? Oh,
Well, Matt loves wings, and I told him Zoto's has some killer wings, so we're gonna go there on Thursday.
so you're going to a bowling alley that has great food. Okay, that's the win-win. Instead of so the alternative would be, oh, let's go bowling and then let's eat after or before. That's a compromise. That's where not both of you are spending your Friday night exactly how you'd like. So the most optimal situation would be to go to a bowling alley that has the food that you're looking for. But yeah.
Does anybody have any questions, or is there any fill in the blanks that you missed that you need?
Good?
I don't really understand F.
Win-win or no deal. So that's, okay, so win-win or no deal is when you're giving the ultimatum like the sports team. So either you're gonna commit to the sports team or not play the sport at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I got you with that, but I'm just trying to imply like another example.
Covey, like, he also uses businesses, so we like wanted to try to relate it to kinesiology, but he mainly uses like business as an example. And he says new businesses is where this is most effective. So like, you're trying to create a win-win deal for like the business, or like the person like owning the building or something, and the business person who's like renting from the business owner or the building owner. And so in the beginning, you want to try to create that win-win, but also keep it like something open where like if it's not working out in the like down the road, that you can just cut the deal off without like cutting like a friendship off or something like that.
Thanks.
Michael?
I know that there's probably not ever a good time for a lose-lose, but would there be a effective time for a lose-win or for a win-lose?
Covey just says that the most ideal one is win-win.
Okay.
And that's what you're supposed to strive for, so that everybody's happy, basically.
Okay.
Because anything that says lose, obviously somebody's losing, and that's not ideal necessarily.
Yeah, and like he also like highlights that win-lose is like obviously it happens a lot, and like it's competition pretty much, because if someone's always going to win, someone's always going to lose, and he just basically says that like life isn't always a competition. And like one example he gave was like a marriage. If you're not like if someone's like a dumb question he said is like who's winning in your marriage, because if you're not both winning, you're losing pretty much. Yeah, for sure.
And he also talks about an abundance mentality where there's enough success for everybody. There isn't just a small, like a limited piece of pie.
Okay. What if there is like a zero situation where you guys both can win, but like you can lose, but then also win because like you get fulfillment out of the other person winning?
So that sounds more like a compromise.
And it isn't good to ever
Because one of
compromise.
you is compromising your beliefs, and one of you is like taking away from your optimal benefit.
Okay.
That just by hearing that, I thought about like, what about when Jesus got crucified? Would that be a lose-win, like a lose for Jesus' body, but we win with like eternal life? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
We're benefiting from His loss.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That's a good one.
That's what I thought about.
I mean, I guess it would be kind of depending on how Jesus saw that, because he would probably have seen it as a win for himself, and that's all based on personal perception. Like that was his end goal, if you will. That was it, yeah, exactly. That was what he was made for us to do. Makes sense?
You guys have two athletes. So where would you say for the college athletics?
What's the question?
For the college, you guys have two college athletes. I was gonna say, as for like college athletics, it's different from high school, like younger sports, like you said, where it's all inclusive. But in a competitive field, what would you say our mindset should be focused in for the paradigms?
I still think we should be focusing on win, because you just have to find a different area that you may be winning in. So you may be winning in being a great teammate, but you might not be winning by being on the court. Does that make sense?
I was just thinking like, so you can lose but take a win from that, is what this paradigm is saying, in a win-win. So a loss can be looked at as a win as well.
Yeah, it's all about, well, you have to pick the parts out of it and you have to learn from it and move on. But athletics is hard because there's somebody who loses and there's somebody who wins. So that's a hard comparison to make, which is why we chose joining a sports team as the example versus a game.
Okay.
Austin, you had your hand up.
I was just gonna say, like, is there any situation where you were saying compromise is okay? Because I feel like we have a lot of situations in our life where compromise is like necessary, especially in a situation where it's not a friend and it's more higher stakes on the line, or in a business situation, or in our profession, a compromise I feel like is okay. So is there a way to find that compromise where everyone's happy and it's like a win-win compromise?
I mean, he also talks about like in lose-win, for example, like it might feel like the person who's losing is like okay with it because he's like pleasing the other person, but like down the line, like there's gonna be like kind of resentment a little bit, and like all right, like I just kind of let the person trample all over me, and like down the line it's not gonna be a win-win, even though it might feel like a win-win in like the present kind of.
Yeah.
So I feel like he really tries to emphasize a win-win mentality at all times.
Or maybe like a lose-win up front will then lead to a reverse lose-win, and in the end creates
exactly.
a win-win or something like that,
Uh-huh.
in terms of compromising up front to then have what you're gaining.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Hi guys, so we'll be teaching Cubby's habit number 5 for you today. First off, Kristen and Pokey will demonstrate and act out a scenario, and we want you guys to just interpret their conversation and try to figure out what the conversation went wrong. Try to focus on their like verbal communication, the tone of speech, their body language, and like their facial expressions. So, yeah, great.
Oh gosh, practice was so hard today. Look at all these blisters I have, Kristen.
Here, try these on. They're great for me, and I have an extra pair.
Are these the new Adidas 360s? Heck yeah.
They totally make me run faster and jump higher. They're the absolute best.
They're kind of small, a little snug on me. I don't know.
That's because you haven't even tried them out yet. Take a lap at least.
Okay, fine. I guess I'll try it. I don't feel like Ronaldo, so I don't know if I like them. I don't know. They're too tight. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really like them.
Well, they're awesome, right?
Yeah, for you, they're awesome, but not really for me.
Oh my gosh. Try harder. You're being so ungrateful, Pokey. Oh my gosh, I'm giving you my Adidas 360. At least act like they worked.
So what are some things you found kind of off about their conversation?
It wasn't a good one if she doesn't like it.
Anyone? Nick?
You received a gift and she was ungrateful.
Yeah? Getting there? Period?
Kristen may have not handled it as well. She should have.
Uh-huh. Belinda?
I was just gonna say Kristen wasn't listening to anything that we were saying.
Right. Do you guys think that Kristen could have listened more effectively to Pokey? In like what ways do you think she could have?
Taking her input and in it and not just bouncing off and just saying you should be grateful for what I've given you.
Mm-hmm.
Like take it into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so from this scenario, Kristen, she was really quick to judge Pokey, and she couldn't really understand why Pokey didn't like the shoes and why the shoes didn't fit her. And so our habit for today is all about empathetic listening, seeking first to understand, then to be understood. Kristen, she was very quick to act in frustration, and so that's not the best approach to go about things, especially when you're communicating with anybody, whether it's a stranger or a friend. And so we thought that it'll be a good lesson for us to teach you guys how to be better listeners. Yeah.
Yep, okay. So, sorry, Covey states that empathetic listening gets inside another person's frame of reference. So you look through it, you see the world the way they see the world, you kind of understand other people's paradigms, and you kind of understand how they feel. So basically, it's really never about you, unfortunately, but it's about seeing others through their lens. And so Covey talks about how we typically seek first to be understood, and if you've ever noticed, like when you're talking to somebody, they're like not really listening with the intent to understand, but with the intent to reply. So oftentimes, like, I don't always need an answer. Sometimes I kind of just want a listening ear. And so people are either speaking or preparing to speak to you. They're filtering through their own paradigms and reading through their own autobiography. And so basically the essence of empathetic listening is not that you agree with somebody, it's that you fully, deeply understand somebody intellectually and emotionally.
So I'd like to give you all a head start on becoming the best listeners that you can possibly become by learning to listen with your eyes. So I would like everyone, we're gonna do an activity, and that activity is emotional charades. So I'd like everyone to pick a partner, and throughout this activity, every partner is going to pick an emotion. And you're only going to express that emotion through facial expressions and body language. There will be no words used. So let's see how well of listeners we can be by being silent and observing. So I'd like everyone to make contact with a partner right now. Okay, so everyone has a partner. I'm going to be setting a timer on my phone for 30 seconds, okay? When the alarm goes off, I would like everyone to regroup as a class, and we're going to discuss what we experienced through this activity. Ready, set, begin. Sorry.
Kids are switching. I hate you.
Oh, I my alarm in the morning.
All right. So was everyone able? Okay. Was everyone able to guess the correct emotion that your partner was displaying? Yes, I see some yeses. Okay. So was it easy? How could you guys distinguish? Like, was your partner happy? Were they sad? Were they angry? What were some ways that you were able to read?
Their eyebrows.
Okay, so facial expressions, exactly. Maybe some squinting. Okay, great. So it sounds like there were some challenges because I'm not hearing very much. So as we can tell, it can be difficult to read a person through their body language and through their facial expressions, as we just experienced. However, we don't know it. However, it makes it even more difficult when we don't know the person that well, or when they may be experiencing multiple emotions at one time. So it's not wise to jump to conclusions about someone else's feelings. Instead, we can make educated guesses like we just did throughout this activity by reading the person and really feeling what they're feeling, not just jumping to conclusions and putting our own experiences into play. Unfortunately, many people do not listen well. They do not listen to understand. Instead, they are listening and preparing themselves for a reply or a response. So for example, when someone is speaking, we are usually listening on one of 4 levels. Level 1 is ignoring. You're not listening at all. Level 2 is pretending to listen. So you're not truly engaged and you're not really paying attention to the other person. So for example, yeah, sure. Level 3 is selective listening. You listen to only the parts of the conversation that interest you. And then level 4, the highest level of listening, is attentive listening. You pay attention to the words and the emotions and the feelings that are being expressed by the other person.
Yeah, so basically, I believe that empathetic listening is based off of your openness and your trust with somebody. And so this kind of allows for your emotional bank accounts, what Linnea touched on last week. And so they talked about 4 skills. And so the first one is you mimic your content. So basically, this is taught in active or reflective listening. So you're listening to the words that literally come out of somebody's mouth. And then your second one is you rephrase the content. So you kind of put the person's words into your own words. And this is like, Covey said it's like listening with the left side of your brain, so it's like your reasoning and your logic. And then the third one is you reflect the feeling. So you pay attention just as much to what the person says as to what they say. And the last one, you like kind of put it together. You rephrase the content and then you reflect the feeling. So you use both sides of your brain now, and then which understands both sides of somebody's communication, if that makes sense. And then, so basically, I kind of, for example, like I feel like I don't listen empathetically all of the time. And so I kind of put my own autobiographical response to it. But what Covey means is that we look into our own experiences. It's really never about us, like what I said before, but we think about too much about myself rather than thinking about the person as who they are as a whole. And so he also talks about 4 autobiographical responses. First one is we evaluate, so we either disagree or we agree. And then we probe, so we ask questions from our own frame of reference. And then we advise, so we give counsel based on our own experiences. And the last one is we interpret, so we try to figure out and explain their motives and their behavior from our own motives and our own behavior. So going way back to Kristen and I's demonstration, you all witnessed how Kristen wasn't really listening to me because we obviously have 2 different sized feet. And I like Nike sometimes more than I like Adidas. And she was kind of putting her own input, and she was being really pushy and just not understanding like what I was saying. So I think it's communication. You're truly listening to what somebody says. You don't always have to have a response. You don't always have to reply, but it's really listening to somebody. There's a difference between hearing somebody and listening to somebody. I don't know if you, yeah.
Would using proactive language be a good response?
Proactive language, like give me an example.
Like if Kristen would have just told you, well, why don't you just try them out for a week, and if they still don't fit, then I can do my part and just return them and get you, or you can come with me, you can get whatever pair you want, just kind of help you understand that she's trying to make it work, and then maybe you try to make it work, and then...
Yeah, so kind of like a compromise in a way. Talking about like a win-win.
Yeah, it could be a compromise. Is it?
That's not a win-win.
Yeah, it's kind of win-win.
So of course, every circumstance is different. In this circumstance particularly, she needed something that would help her excel at soccer. Wearing too big of cleats wouldn't excel. And I was just completely being oblivious to that fact. I was just only focused on what worked for me and what worked best for me, and was trying to push it onto her. So yes, being proactive definitely is, using proactive language is the best route to truly understand where a person is coming from. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So Kristen had the good intentions of like trying to solve the solution by pushing the fact that, oh, these shoes work for me, so why can't it work for Pokey? And so there was a communication breakdown in which that she wasn't able to see Pokey's point of view. So proactive, listening can be beneficial, but it depends on the circumstance, I guess. So yeah, in general, communication breakdown is just like a recipe for disaster for any type of relationship. So building the skills of empathetic listening allows openness and trust to anybody in a certain type of relationship. However, there's a risk of being vulnerable, but in order to have influence, you need to be influenced. When both parties are willing to emotionally deposit themselves into their bank accounts by putting the time and energy to truly invest and genuinely seek out the intentions of another person, the quality of the relationship will also follow and enrich.
So to conclude, I'd like to give everyone a takeaway or send you home with a little homework. Next time that you're talking to a family member or a close friend or just anyone, I really would like to urge you guys to put yourself in their shoes. And not even just that, actually sit there, open your ears and eyes like we discussed today, and really feel from your heart what they're telling you, what they're talking about, what their dilemma is, whatever they're putting on the table. Accept it and then respond. So I want you guys to remember to always seek first to understand and then to be understood. Are there any questions?
Oh, I know you're gonna ask a question.
I already had something written down, yeah. It was for Kristen also. So is there any way that you were talking about the 4 levels of listening?
Yes.
And I instantly like ran clear with the middle 2 because I
Okay.
often see myself in between those 2. And my question would probably be, how do you traverse going from, like, can you be stuck in one but find yourself going to 3 sometimes? Like I'm not listening to anything, and then someone says something, I'm like, all right, I hear that.
So to have everyone understand what I was asking, he's pertaining right now to the pretending to listen and the selective listening. So yes, of course, I mean, I think we all find ourselves throughout the day occupied on our phones and, oh my gosh, what's happening? But yet someone's talking to you and you're just like, yeah. And then you hear them speak about donuts. So they get your attention and you're like, wait, are there sprinkles on those donuts? You know, so yeah, of course there's a lot of like fluctuating between that. But it's about how you carry yourself as a person too. You know, from the get-go, should you have been on your phone while the person was talking to you? You know, it's about pausing and really understanding where you are in the moment and what's happening. You know, I think in this day and age, we are really distracted by choices. And, you know, choices will have us go a little to the left when we should be in the center. Or does that answer your question?
Did you want to ask something?
Yeah, I think do you think that there's a time when a response isn't necessary? And as we use, like Matt's question with proactive language, does proactive thinking about them distract us from actually listening because we're still trying to be proactive and thinking about our response? And is that still focusing then on what we're going to say?
So there were a lot of questions asked in that right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start from the beginning. So do you always need to have a response? Absolutely not. Because can you always answer every question that's asked to you? No. And you don't wanna give bad advice, you don't wanna give half advice, especially if this person's coming to you seeking advice, you know? I mean, with that being said, a response could be, well, maybe it's time to go talk to a psychiatrist, or maybe, and you know, that's one level, or, you know, maybe you really should talk to your mom about this, or it's only going to continue to make you more frustrated, whatever the situation may be. Could you ask, sorry, there was a lot asked.
Yeah, I mean, essentially my question is, do you think it's always appropriate to answer? And my second question was just, do you think that proactive thinking about it can sometimes then distract from actually truly listening, because then you're trying to think so hard about your answer?
Right.
I think it depends on the person you're interacting with. So like, for example, I have a friend that is having a really hard time with one of her friends, and she's come to me for advice. And she's asked like what I think. So I think it depends on the appropriate time. Like if she's asking what I think, rather than just throwing out what I think immediately, and just sitting and waiting and actually like reading the person. So like when we did the exercise, like you're reading the person, their emotions, eyebrows. Like I think it's like reading the person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think Kristen brings up a good point about phones, and this book wasn't necessarily written in today's day and age.
Yeah.
And it's even harder now with social media and texting to just interrupt right away. You see the bubbles typing, or you see a picture and your instant buzz to just answer it.
Yeah.
And to respond to it. So just thinking about, you know, being proactive is a good step, because we're thinking about what we're gonna say, but then how do we respond by just like not answering them?
And also with proactiveness, it can be both a pro and a con, I feel like. Just because, say for example, if you're talking to somebody and they have a specific problem, you give them their point of view. You give them their point of view, try to give the best advice, the best intention, but sometimes that
other person may not be able to process the advice as the other person can, which like Pokey said, it may take time for them to truly try to solve the actual problem once and for all. So it may not be like a one-time situation where like there's a problem and fix, but it can extend over time. And so I think it's just important in general to have an open mind and be able to have a conversation where you're not just saying over and over again, this is the only way, this is the only answer to solve the issue, but just to conversate and like genuinely seek the best benefit for them, if that makes sense. So.
I feel like, at least I feel like this with my mom, that sometimes when she comes, you know, up to me, or she wants to talk to me about what's going on in our family most of the time, how I can all immediately just weigh in her vulnerability to where I already know, like, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just like, she just wants my ears right now, and like kind of like my heart, and just like she wants me to kind of be like the peacemaker of within the whole family. I feel like that's kind of like my role, and for sure, like that's the one thing that I feel is just weighing that vulnerability, and I don't know just how much that you're right. Not everything really just need a response. You just need a presence. That's already a good response.
Instead of, thinking that you're always right or always preparing what you can say in your mind to say to that other person, I think it's most important to just be in the present moment and be the person that person needs in their lives. So like, I don't know, for being vulnerable right now, like I deal with like family issues, and like my family's kind of dysfunctional with communication breakdown, but like sometimes like if I say something, my parents won't respond in the best way that I want, or just like they don't see my point of view. So I think like what Matt was saying, like it's best to just kind of be the peacemaker and just be that type of person that the other person needs to just be loving and supportive, no matter the situation. So.
Do you think that, I guess this could be for either three of you, do you think that if you're the one that is seeking to be understood first, like if you're the one doing the speaking and someone doesn't necessarily respond the way that you want them to, do you think that's more of the fault of the speaker or fault of the listener? And I guess the follow-up to that is maybe, is that conversation supposed to be had with somebody else or something along those lines? Like, do you think that maybe that friendship isn't at that spot? Or is that like a specific person's fault, or is that just like a bad time and place, I guess? There's kind of a lot in there.
I don't think, so personally, I don't think I would go to like a certain friend if I knew that they weren't like depositing stuff into my life.
May I add?
Yeah.
So I think you bring up a really valid point. I think we all experience this day to day. I mean, we all have that one friend or couple friends that we go to talk about genuine conversations compared to other people that we go to just to talk about, oh my gosh, pedagogy today was just so boring. Like, that's a conversation you can have with anyone. But when it really comes to feelings and expressing your feelings, as we've already used the word vulnerable, you can't be vulnerable with everyone. Most people can't. So I think it's a whole evaluating process that we individually go through, and we just know who we can talk with. And yeah, sometimes people are gonna take you by surprise, and you're gonna be like, wow, I've really depended on you, and I just came to you with this situation, and you know, you might walk away from it being like, well, next time I'm gonna maybe think about someone else to talk to instead of this person. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
And what you said with by fault, I think that, I don't know, I don't really like the word fault just because I think what the problem is between the two persons is that one person has this viewpoint and the other has a totally different one. And it's, if one person isn't able to look into the perspective of the other, it can lead to like consequences of like, I don't know, like this miscommunication of maybe being demanding and being frustrated that the other person can't understand, or it's been so long and still that person doesn't understand and there's no solution being resolved. So I don't think it is a fault necessarily, just like maybe it will take time for that certain individual to shift their mindset that they're so stuck on and try to see it from the other person's point of view. And I think that that's really the only way to solution anything. And especially with like relationships too, like I was researching, and like one of the top reasons that relationships fail today is just poor communication in general. And you know, with relationships, if you're just yelling, trying to push your beliefs or opinions on somebody else, they could shut it off or just, you know, try to convince the other person. So it's more about being on the same page and just looking out for each other's best interests.